I, 23 female, live in an apartment complex that, like many other apartment complexes, has more residents than it does parking spaces. The spots next to the building usually fill up before 9 p.m., so when I come home late, as I often do, I usually have to park across the lot and walk. My complex is in a very quiet suburb, literally down the street from a police station, so I've never thought twice about the walk. Last night, I pulled into my parking lot around midnight, and unsurprisingly, all the spots next to the building were full. Not far away, though. There are a handful of spots in the middle of the lot between some garages and our mailroom. A car was pulling into one space on the side closest to my building. I noticed that there was still another space on the other side, one spot over from the entryway to the mailroom. So I loop around and park. The other car was turned off, but the driver hadn't got out of the car yet, so I took my time turning my car off, checking my phone for a moment, etc. I'm naturally a nervous person, and I wanted this person to get out of their car and be on their way before I had to walk in front of it to make my way to the building. So after a second, this guy gets out of his car and walks behind it, towards my car, but also towards the 3 buildings behind me, so I think nothing of it. Until he stops, and it looks like he's looking directly at me. I'm not even sure if he could really see me in the dark, but I swear I felt like I was making eye contact with him. Then, the guy starts walking again, speed walking, directly at my car. There's a little lane in the middle of the parking spots to allow cars through, but he's not walking along it. He's beelining directly for my driver's side door. My heart started racing, but I assured myself that it was nothing and he was going to change his path any moment to head towards the mailroom, or one of the buildings behind me. I kept waiting for that trajectory change, but it never came. He walked straight up to my car, and I was in complete panic. All I could think to do was to make sure my doors were locked, and thank God they were. I swear on everything, I saw him reach for the handle of my rear door, but then just before he touched my car, he suddenly veered just slightly to the sidewalk around the back of my car and into the mailroom. I didn't even think. I just jumped out and bolted across the parking lot. A quick glance over my shoulder showed me that he had come straight back out of the mailroom when he heard my car door. I heard him walking quickly, but I didn't see which way he was going because I was too focused on getting myself into the building. It all happened in less than a minute, but it had me worked up for the rest of the night. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, but there was no reason for him to have come at my car the way he did. It just wouldn't make any logical sense. I know if the guy lives in my complex, it's more than likely I might encounter him again, but I'd really be happy to just never see him again. So this was nearly 20 years ago. Sheesh, I feel old. Over a few months, all these posters of missing women kept going up in the neighborhood I lived in and the neighborhoods nearby. One night we were sitting in a bar, and there were probably about 20 people in there total. Everyone having a nice time, no drama, nothing out of the ordinary. When this guy walks in and sits down, he was wearing regular, not noteworthy clothing. He didn't talk or say anything strange. He wasn't even acting in a weird way, but the whole room went cold. People stopped talking, shuffling around in their seats. It was like this dark, unrecognizable energy had entered the room. I remember feeling breathless and like I just wanted to run out of the room. Everyone else in the bar seemed to be responding the same way. The guy walked over to the bar and asked for a drink, and I've never seen this happen before to a sober customer who hasn't caused any trouble, but the barman turned him away. And the guy left. Almost immediately, the atmosphere went back to what it had been. I walked up to the bar and ordered a drink and asked the bartender why he refused that guy a drink. We were friendly, as I drank there regularly, and he said the guy just made him uncomfortable in a way he'd never experienced before, that he couldn't bring himself to serve him a drink. Other people in the bar began to agree, but no one could put their finger on why. A couple of weeks later, I was watching the news and there was a breaking story about how someone had found dismembered limbs in a rubbish bag. The remains belonged to the missing women whose missing photos we had been seeing for months. They were all sex workers. They showed a photograph of the serial killer they'd caught, and sure enough, it was the guy in the bar that night who no one could bear to be in the room with. I can't explain why, because when he walked in and asked for a drink, he really didn't do anything strange. But he brought this terrifying, inhumane, unrecognizable energy with him. Sometimes I can even wonder if he had just killed someone that night or killed someone an hour or so later, and that's why the presence of evil felt so visceral that night. When I was younger, about 9 or so years old, me and my best friend, both small and quite thin girls, mind you, were walking home from school. It was already dark outside since we go to a school which works in double shifts. Some go in the morning and others on the afternoon shift. It sounds weird, but that's how it goes here. We were already on the street that has our houses, and we're quite close to them. Mine was closer to where we were, and hers was about 10 to 12 houses down. We see this guy walking on the opposite side of the road. We see him and think nothing of it. It's just some guy walking somewhere. But then the guy speeds up and crosses to our side. That's when my friend gets scared. And this guy looks rough. He was tall and had some baggy clothing on as well as a hoodie, and the streetlights weren't the best, so we couldn't see his face. He was walking faster and not going back to his side of the road, and my friend kept saying we should run, but since I was being quite dumb and didn't think anything was wrong, I refused. And that's when my friend said run and grabbed me, basically dragging me to our neighbor's yard, since their yard gate was open and we hid behind it. The guy kept walking and constantly turned around to look at where we were. He saw where we ran, but I guess he didn't follow us since there were lights coming on from the neighbor's window. When he was about 3 houses down, we just started running each in the direction of our houses. She ran on the opposite side of him, but I had to run parallel to him because my house was on a dirt road, which was separated from the paved one by a big ditch. I vividly remember seeing him stop to turn around and see which houses we ran to, and since I was closer, he definitely saw where I went. And this creeps me out to this day, when I think that if my friend wasn't there that night and if she hadn't dragged me to that yard, I would have almost definitely been abducted, or worse. One time, my parents had left for work, my sister had gone to school, and I, 20 female, was alone at home. My neighborhood is in a fairly secluded area, situated at the top of a huge hill, so it's fairly rare to have anyone visit. I was lounging around and watching TV when I heard the doorbell ring. I never answer the door as, again, we never have anyone visiting, and my family obviously knows how to get in the house themselves. So I ignored it, even when it rang a second time. By the third time, I was a little annoyed and I tiptoed over to the front door. The front entrance of our house is essentially a big wooden door surrounded by a wall, so there isn't any way for us to check who's on the outside, unless we go to our piano room and check out the window. This means there's no way for anyone on the outside to know if we're there unless we're stomping around in the house. So I stood behind the front door waiting for the person to leave. I mean, no one answered your third doorbell ring, right? Surely you would just leave. Suddenly, there was a heavy banging on the door, which made me jump. I heard a deep man's voice speak from the other side of the door. "I know you're in there." My heart jumped and got caught in my throat, and for a second I'm looking around, trying to figure out how the man knew. After a long silence, I heard muffled chatter and then the sound of footsteps leaving. I didn't dare to open the door in case they hadn't actually left. After I called my parents to check if anyone was meant to be visiting, no, not that we know of, I was a little surprised by the odd encounter, but eventually I went back to watching TV and soon forgot about it. 2 hours later, I hear the doorbell ring again. Feeling a sense of nervousness, I turned down the TV volume. This time I got up slowly and snuck over to the piano room where I could possibly sneak a peek and see who was there. I knelt down and slowly raised my head over the sill to see, at the door, was a woman dressed in all black. Black high heels, a plain black dress which came down to mid-calf, and an unusually large brimmed black hat, which was bizarre considering it was summer and very hot. She had long dark brown hair, though her face was covered by the brim of her hat. The only thing I could see were her bright red lips pulled up in an eerily wide smile. Beside her was a tall, buff guy wearing a dark suit. I don't remember much of his features except that he was a Caucasian man and had a very serious expression. What disturbed me most wasn't so much the intimidating guy, but the sight of the woman who stood there literally unmoving, smiling at the front door, which was yet to be opened. It felt like a solid minute before she finally took a step back and, without a word, began to walk down the driveway. The man followed her step. To this day, I'm not sure who she was, why they were at the door, and whether they were the ones which knocked at the door earlier, but needless to say, the deep voice calling, "I know you're in there," and the image of the woman in black was not one I forgot easily. So I've posted before about the sketchy places I used to live at, and I thought that although it may not be as scary or personal as my other stories, I would share this one anyway. So as I've said in my previous posts, my family isn't particularly rich, so we always end up living in dodgy areas simply because the housing is cheaper. To give a bit more of an explanation, it's quite common to see up to 4 cop cars in the streets. It's kind of a guessing game of which dealer they came for this time. In fact, my previous landlord turned out to be one and was arrested, causing us to have no choice but to move out. It wasn't a massive move, as we literally got an identical house on the opposite side of the street, so I wasn't going to miss out on all the drama. By this, I mean I watched a car being stolen from my window. I'd like to add that I was 13 at this point, and I couldn't really give more of a statement to the police than what the camera on one of the other houses had caught, so I just watched. Another time, a new friend was coming around mine, and there was a fight in the streets. I told her to just walk past it, but she spent the entire evening being paranoid that they will come after us for whatever reason. The instance that I think sums the place up perfectly is when I was talking to a different friend, and I said I didn't know what weed smelled like, and without skipping a beat, she responded with, "It smells like your street." Anyway, fast forward to when I was 16 or 17, which is when the story I would like to share takes place. So at this point in my life, I was experimenting with a number of hard drugs. Nothing serious, just at parties and such, and I'm not into that stuff anymore. Just rebellious teen stuff at the time. I would also like to add that these drugs didn't come from any of the people on my street. So it was about 7 or 8 in the evening, and I was cycling to the center of town for one of these parties. I had barely left my house, and I was about a corner away, when I saw a man lying on the pavement with 2 paramedics from a nearby ambulance car crouched next to him. I just kind of cycled past thinking, wow, what a legend, as I myself have been in situations where I drank so much and passed out. So I arrive at the party, get pretty high on whatever Class A drug I was doing that day. We have a great time, and I'm back on my bike in the early hours of the morning to go home. But as I'm about to reach the street from before, I see the blue and white police tape and officers standing around a white tent on the pavement. I quickly turned, as not only was I underage, but I was completely off my face and didn't want to get into any trouble. I tried to get around the place, taking the next street, and then the next, and then the next, but I soon had to realize there was no way I could get back into my house without crossing the police tape. I went up to one of the officers and told them that I lived there and needed to get through. I tried my best to hide my dinner plate-sized pupils. He was super nice and escorted me to the corner of my street. As I was reading the news the next day, I found the article on the man that I had cycled past. It turns out that he was stabbed to death on the street after having some kind of drug-related conflict. The scary part is, and the thing that I feel extremely guilty about, is the fact that I just cycled past chuckling and thinking he drank too much, when in reality, the man was dead. I'd never seen a dead body before that, and it didn't fully sink in until days later. He didn't look dead, and I assumed the paramedics were just blocking my view of the pool of blood around him. But still, knowing that you could be laying lifeless in the street, and people will go straight past you assuming everything is fine is scary to think about. I know there wasn't anything I could have done, as the paramedics were already on the scene, but this is the kind of thing you read about in the news, not see in real life. To this day, I can't forget how he was just lying there motionless. Me and a bunch more people in the area left flowers and cards on the lamppost next to where he died, and although I never knew the man, thinking of it still hits me hard in the feels. It just makes me think, what if I had left 10 minutes before I did? Would I have had to have called the ambulance? Would I have even stopped? I don't know the answers to these questions. All I know is that if I ever see someone in need of help in the future, I will not think twice about stopping. And I will not just laugh it off like I did with that man. So to conclude, I hope that guy can rest in peace and his family have found justice. Thank you for listening. Hey, hi, howdy, my lovely listeners. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and I hope that you enjoyed this collection of creepy encounters, because I did. Pretty good encounters in this one, honestly. Some of them a little less on the actual right in front of you creepy side, but the subtlety can sometimes make things more terrifying. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, please consider joining the Nevermore. To join the Nevermore, all you have to do is click that subscribe button and the bell next to it. That's it. Then you're part of the Nevermore, and I love you forever. You can do things to support the Nevermore, such as liking me on Facebook, joining me in my subreddit, following me on the Twitters and Instagrams, and, supporting me through Coffee and Patreon. All those things are optional, and every single one of them is greatly appreciated. All that said, my friends, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope you have a fantastic week. And hey, I have a suggestion. Why don't you give me a call? 913-303-RAVN. That's RAVN. I can't remember the numbers, but you can figure it out. So, give me a call. Just saying. Alright guys, love you all. Have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you in the next video. But until then, sleep well.